And he said, well, I'm here, aren't I? I said, yeah, but maybe you didn't go to bed last night. Maybe you never got in the bed. And he said, well, you could ask my wife. She'd tell you I was there. To which I said, okay, but that's not the scientific method. The scientific method is a hypothesis that you repeat the experiment over and over again. You can prove by a scientific method you have the capacity to get out of bed, but you can't prove you got out of bed this morning unless you have witnesses. Your wife said you were in the bed. And so, but that's not the scientific method, that's a historical method, that's a witness method.
Oh, okay, so you're using a definition of the scientific method that's taught to 5th graders, right? Actual scientists use historical evidence.
Well, I wish he would have said that because he is a professor there and he didn't have an answer.
Yeah, not
so he came back the next day. He came back the next day. And again, what I'll say is, you can prove you got out of bed this morning. But the way you prove it, if you ask someone, did you see the person? That's not the scientific method, that's the historical method. That's asking a witness. You can't prove by the scientific method. When I go home today, you can't prove by the scientific method that I was on campus today. But you could ask all kinds of people, and based on their testimony and witness, you can conclude
you're on a webcam right now, so we could.
You were here today.
Could we find your DNA?
Oh, okay, so I think
DNA.
So anyway,
DNA.
No,
that's where he went. That's where he went. The next day he came back, and you could tell he thought about it all night long, because he said you could go into the bed where my sheets were and get my DNA, and that would prove I was there. And I said, Professor, listen, I'm not against science. I'm not against the scientific method. I'm not against DNA. But I'll say this. It's just not the only way to know what's true. It's a way to know what's true in the material world. It's not the only way to know what's true in life.
Okay.
And I gave an example. I said, Professor, are you married? Are you married?
I am married to myself.
Oh.
So I said, Professor, are you married? And he said, yes. I said, can I ask you, has your wife ever said to you, honey, sometimes I wonder if you really love me. Do you really love me? And he said, I suppose every wife has asked that of her husband at some point. I said, you're probably right. Now, when your wife asks you, honey, do you really love me? By the way, you're married?
I am.
Is your wife out here?
No.
Is your wife? No. So, did your wife ever ask you if you love her?
Of course.
All right. Now, I said, Professor, at that time, did you say, honey, it's a very legitimate question you asked if I love you. And I'm going to prove you that I do. We're going to go down to the campus, and there's a laboratory there. And we're going to put some electrodes on my brain. And when you walk by and come in the room, you'll see how the scan goes, and that'll prove that I love you. Would you do that to your wife?
If she demanded that kind of evidence, sure.
No, she's not going to demand it.
Actually, she's a
Steve
scientist, so she
might. Are you Steve?
What? No, I'm not Steve.
What?
Are you Steve?
I am.
Who are you?
I'm Brian.
Brian might say, I don't believe it without the scanning.
But I can
But
demonstrate
you know what?
it through my actions.
So, in other words, she's asking for something beyond scientific proof. She's asking for something emotional. She's asking for something, should we say, non-material. She's asking to feel love, to feel warmth, to feel compassion. And you know what? I'm going to argue, and maybe you guys feel differently, but I'm going to argue those are non-material things. I'm going to argue, I'm going to argue that if you become so materialistic that the material is all there is, you lose your soul. And your soul, such things that matter, love matters. I don't think that can be explained by science.
It can be explained by science.
Justice matters.
It can be
And I don't
explained
think
by
justice
science.
can be explained by... Well,
Yes, justice can
let me
be
put it this
explained.
way. I don't think they can give an adequate explanation
Okay.
for
you
why
don't
we
think
love
that's possible,
and
but
want to be
that
loved.
doesn't mean it's not.
I'm kind of on a roll here.
We know.
I don't think...
Yeah, just let us finish speaking first and then put your comments in after.
Yeah. I don't think that...
He doesn't stop.
I don't think that
Literally does not stop.
Well, I do stop. And I've listened to you and I've listened to him. Now you listen to me. All right? So, I don't think materialistic answers can explain why we all want to love and be loved. Why injustice bothers us. Why we think about what happens after death. Where our sense of wanting to be right or wanting to be good comes from. These are all things that they're not material. They're real, they're inside, they're true, but you can't touch them, you can't measure them, but they're real. And when we try and reduce stuff like that, the spiritual part of us, to say, no, we're just material, nothing else, I think we really do a big disservice to our humanity. Yes, sir. And I don't want you to get towed. I don't want you to get towed.
I went back. If any of you guys would want to put that quarter in my...
You're okay. You're welcome. It wasn't me. Whoever did.
So, must have been good.
It might have been.
Getting back to that, about love, you said, you know, they're not looking for that scientific improvement. They want like emotional passion, what you showed them.
Yeah.
Girl asked me like, do you love me? I could very easily lie to her. I could take her out to a date, guys and flowers, but I don't really care. They're just trying to sleep with her.
Right.
But if we hooked up those electrodes to my brain, if we measured my hormone count, my dopamine, whatever it showed up, and I get a positive response from around you, it might not be the most romantic thing, it might not be the likable way to show it, but it would definitely show more evidence and be less refutable.
Okay. But you know what? And your name is? Raymond. Don't do it. If she ever asks you, don't do it.
Right. So it sounds like you're defining emotions.
In all honesty, if you try that, it's going to backfire on you.
So it sounds like
Just
you're
ask any woman
intentionally
here, right?
so it sounds like you're intentionally defining things like emotions to be outside the realm of science. But you have to give us evidence for why we should believe that emotions are outside the realm of science.
Well, first of all, I don't call it an emotion.
You don't call love an emotion?
No. Love has an emotional component to it, but it's far more than an emotion.
What is the stuff that isn't emotional?
Well, I'd say that in a sense of justice, and like injustice that can bother me. Like when I see injustice, why does it anger me? Why does it?
Is anger not an emotion?
Yes, but
because everything you're describing about love and injustice and anger are all things that I would call emotions, which can in fact be observed through scientific method.
And I say again, there's an emotional component, but it's more than that.
Right, and I want to know what the more than that part is.
Well, love is, sometimes the person does something extremely loving that they don't feel like doing. When a mom gets up and it stays up with her sick child at night, she doesn't feel like it. It's a sacrifice she makes. It's a loving act to do that there's something inside that compels her to have that compassion and that,
like a sense of empathy or emotion, which are again science.
Biologically need to pass on your genetics.
Well, if you're going to say, here's the thing.
I don't know. When I hear all this, I just feel like we're being compared to animals. Then we're not really humans.
Well, that's right.
Humans are animals?
Humans are animals.
We're animals.
Well,
I mean, if we're gonna say that, then we might as well not even be building. Oh yeah.
Just
we're
because
we're just
what?
be rolling
Human
around
humana?
in the fucking woods.
See, I agree with you.
I mean, that's just what my personal 2 cents. I don't know anything about like creationism and all that. I can't like speak my own thoughts because I don't know it deeply. But from what I'm hearing right now, it just sounds like we're being observed by each other. We're just like animals walking around with backpacks and clothes.
See, here's the thing, we are. I mean, if that's exactly what we are. But I think a lot of people have a fear that, right, if we just accept a naturalistic explanation,
No, of course,
all
like-
the magic goes away, but it doesn't. It's more magical because we better understand the world around us. We better understand when we look up at the stars in the sky that they are thousands and thousands and thousands of years away from us. And how amazing is it that something like this could have happened? Just happened.
You know what? I agree with you about the animals comment. I have a good friend who's, as a matter of fact, he might join us later this week. He's a professor of neuroscience at University of Georgia. And I was talking to him last week about, people saying that we're just animals and animals are intelligent. Look at chimpanzees; they have intelligence, they have brains, they can do all this type of stuff. And he kind of chuckled, and he said, "Yeah, on a really, really good day, they might be able to tell the difference between red and green, but they're never going to write a concert or a book or something like, or create a machine or things like that." Yes, ma'am.
I'm just confused on how emotion, like the concept of emotion, how that plays into the creationist story. Because I don't, like, I know the story of